Let me ask you something. At the end of your shift, when you walk out to your car, are you exhausted in a way that sleep does not fix? Not physically tired, not even mentally drained from making decisions. I mean, that deep, hollow kind of tired. The kind where you feel like you gave everything you had and your team still showed up tomorrow like it never happened. That is emotional labor. And if nobody told you about it when they handed you the manager title, this video is the conversation you should have had on day one. My name is Jennifer. I am the founder of Pen Studio, and for over a decade, I worked into retail management, stores, floors, teams, districts. I've done the morning huddles, the write-ups, and the hard conversations. So let me take you back to a specific season in my career. I was managing a retail team with high turnover, inconsistent performance, and a culture that had been broken long before I even got there. Every single day, I walked in and immediately started reading the room. Who was in a bad mood, who had an attitude, who needed to be coaxed into doing the basic requirements of their job, who had personal drama that was bleeding into their performance. The list goes on and on. And I managed it all. I adjusted my tone, I softened my feedback, and I chose my timing carefully. I hyped up the people when they were low. I de-escalated situations that should never have became a situation. I stayed late. I came early. I smoothed everything over. Performance coaching, the moral pep talks, all while being expected to regulate my own emotions and absorb everyone else's at the same time. And I did not realize what that was costing me until I was running on empty and still showing up, still giving, still performing. Composure for people who could not even tell I was drowning. So I thought that was good leadership. I thought if I just kept up everyone's functioning, kept the floor running, kept people from quitting, I was doing my job. But what I was actually doing was carrying their emotional weight on top of my own. Every single shift. And nobody asked me to do that. Nobody in my leadership training said, by the way, part of your role is absorbing the emotional dysfunction of everyone around you, regulating it, processing it, and still performing. But that is exactly what was happening. And here is what it cost me. My clarity, my authority, my standards, my peace. I was so busy managing feelings that I stopped managing performance. I let things slide because I did not have the bandwidth to deal with the fallout. I tolerated behavior I should have addressed because I was already drained by the time it happened. And one day I sat in my car in the parking lot after a shift and asked myself a question that changed everything. Who am I actually serving here? Because it was not my team, not really. I was not serving them by absorbing their immaturity. I was enabling them. And I was definitely not serving myself. Let me give you a real definition, not the corporate textbook version. Emotional labor is the invisible work of managing your feelings and performing emotions that are not authentic to what you actually feel in order to meet the expectations of your role. For retail managers, that shows up like this. You are angry that your employee showed up late again, but you put on a calm, professional face and have a coaching conversation. You are exhausted, overwhelmed, and honestly frustrated, but you still walk the floor with the energy because the team needs you to see that you're present. You feel disrespected by how the employee spoke to you, but you soften the response because you do not want to seem reactive. You have already had the same conversation with the same person 4 times. You're done. You are over it. But you go back for the 5th time with the same measured tone, the same patience, the same words. That is emotional labor, and it is not inherently wrong. Professionalism requires some level of it, but there is a line, and most retail managers crossed that line so long ago that they do not even know where it is. Here is something I need you to understand. When you were promoted, you were rewarded for performance. You executed, you sold, you showed up, you hit numbers. You did not cause problems. You solved them. Nobody developed you as a leader. Nobody taught you how to separate your personal energy from your professional role. Nobody said your feelings are allowed to exist and they do not have to run the show. Instead, what was modeled for you was this: keep everything smooth, keep everyone happy, and the numbers will follow. So you became a feeler before you became a leader. You manage moods before you manage behavior. You soothe conflict before you enforce standards. And your team learned something critical from that. They learned that their emotional state is your problem. That if they are unhappy enough, uncomfortable enough, resistant enough, you will adjust. And you will adjust. And that is a dangerous pattern because once that is established, every accountability conversation becomes a negotiation, every standard becomes conditional, every expectation becomes dependent on how they feel about it that day. The three places emotional labor destroys your leadership. Number one, hard conversations. Most managers delay hard conversations not because they do not know what to say. They delay them because they are already exhausted at the thought of managing the emotional response on the other side. You are preloading the discomfort before you even open your mouth. You are carrying the weight of their potential reaction before it happens. That is emotional labor in advance, and it paralyzes accountability. Number two, coaching conversations. When you coach from emotional labor, you soften everything. You qualify your feedback, you over explain, you apologize for the expectation, and the employee leaves the conversation not knowing what actually needs to be changed because the message got buried in the effort to protect their feelings. Number three, repeated performance conversations. This is where emotional labor becomes most destructive. You have had the conversation multiple times, and every time you come back to it, you feel more defeated, more drained, more resentful, but you still perform patience, still perform fairness, still give the same grace you gave last month and the month before that. And what happens? Nothing changes because nothing has to change. The consequence is always the same. Another conversation with the same calm manager who is quietly dying inside.